Here we go, OverDrive off and running, TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, and there he is, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star. What's happening, gentlemen? Another very sunny day in Toronto. Beautiful day. Ice cold, but beautiful. I love it.
It is freezing, and Hayesy B, I have to say, I'm feeling motivated today.
Oh, really?
My trainer the last couple days, he's given me the business. He's been very proud of my progress, but he uttered the words today, if you're not going to do this stuff properly, don't bother. And that
okay,
was
so what was he
call.
driving at? What are you doing improperly that's
No,
kind
it's
of
just
on his
like,
radar a little
this
bit?
This guy is literally like Gary Roberts in the gym, and he was like, got to do this to failure, which means like you just pump out 10 reps and then go to the next one and you pump it out, and you're not like dying. It's not good enough, man.
Okay, so
he gave me a wake-up call. He basically said, what you're doing in here is not good enough, so don't be shy to fix it.
I appreciate that.
Me
I
too.
think there's nothing wrong with that, Dave. I'm sure you could probably concur with that. I mean, every once in a while you need to kind of get snapped back into shape a little bit. But I am curious what the end goal is here. Like, what are you training towards? Like, are you looking at 1% body fat? Are you looking at running marathons?
I think I gotta, if I want to get back to looking like an athletic version of myself, Hayes, I got to drop 25 more lbs.
Okay. 25, that's still a long way, man. You've lost a lot of weight. That's a lot, though. Like,
do you have any idea what it's like stepping on the scale and seeing the numbers 30 deuce?
No. I can't say that I do. I haven't. I was close.
Do you know what kind of fear that 30 deuce puts into a man?
300, man. That's a big number for golfers.
Big number.
For men, right? For everybody. You hit 300 off the tee, you love life.
Dude, Hayesy. Yeah, like you want 30 deuce off the tee. You don't want it on the scale, right?
No, you don't. That's troublesome.
You were right about one thing. Like you put like your favorite golf shirt on at 3 bills and like a little vest, and you look in the mirror and you're like, I am golden, right? You trick yourself into being golden. And, dude, you are not golden.
It's very true, man. You find angles, right, Dave? You find the appropriate angle you're looking for, and you think, that'll work for me. What you don't realize is when you're not, like, in that perfect lighting, perfect angle, your viewpoint, and you're just
it's like a guy that has a giant bald spot on top of his head and he tries to curl the hair up. There's other people that are taller than him, and they can see it.
Yes.
So you got to just deal with stuff.
That's the concern, right, Dave?
100%. Like you sometimes don't want to know what you actually look like, right? Like you get into the bathroom with the good lighting and you look okay there. And then you see yourself in another mirror that is not such good lighting. You realize, I'm not.
I'll tell you what the most frightening lighting or visual is. When I was like just an absolute monster, and you go jogging along Bloor Street or Lakeshore, and you look into the window of one of the stores,
terrifying.
Because you think you're an athlete, man. You're jogging, you're moving. You just tilt your head to the left and look inside that store window, and it looks like a different person. It's
terrifying.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
I'll top it though. I'll go over the top. When your clothes, when you're going to buy a new shirt or something, and you've got to try it in, and you go in there and it's the 360 angled windows in the dressing room.
That's brutal.
When that is a terrifying experience because you're in there and there are angles everywhere. You can't move.
No.
And it's very bright, and you realize
you can punch yourself in the face in those rooms.
Those are the moments I remember, like when I was really in bad shape, and I'd go in and be like, "All right, I got to buy a dress shirt, or I got to buy something." You'd be like, "Can I try that on?" You go in there, you start looking around at different angles that are not available to you on a daily basis, and you start realizing this is really got to get short up here. Like I got to snap out of it.
Dude, and you can trick yourself into saying some weird stuff. I've said this before. These mirrors are jacked up. Like they're not. I've said These mirrors are jacked up and they're disproportionate. They're not right, and they're jamming me up. They can't be real mirrors.
It's not me, it's you, and it's not me, it's the mirror. And someone is jamming me up. Blaming the mirrors, man. You know what was also a terrifying experience? Same kind of thing. You thought, man, I was feeling it that night. I had my A stuff going. You know, everyone was in a good mood. I was in a good mood. When Facebook started up, and this doesn't really exist anymore because I don't know who even uses Facebook anymore or who posts anything. I don't know anyone that does. But you'd get tagged in pictures, right? And you'd be in the background and you'd get tagged and you'd get that notification and you would look at that picture and you would absolutely pass out.
Yeah. Like you've got a pizza in one hand, a dart in the other, and your barrel is basically flopping over the shoulder of the guy in front of you, and you want to throw up.
And you can't believe someone, and especially if it was a friend of yours, you'd want to strangle that guy. You'd be like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Tagging me in that picture.
Yeah. Oh, the worst pic to be tagged in is one like at a guy's weekend or something, and you're not looking and not expecting it, and you've got a handful of cards in one hand, like something egregious, and there's just loads of booze, and you're like, how did you got to inform somebody, man.
Yeah, you can't have it.
Cannot have
that. Those are those situations where it's like you can respect like the stand-up comedians that have the no phones rule. Like, you're coming to my show, you have to put your phone in a bag because I don't want people seeing my material. And that's exactly the same thing. Like, there should be a no phones rule among friends, right? Like, we're not videoing this party. We're not chronicling this party. Let's just keep it for the memories, guys.
Absolutely. That's common, man. Like, I know, listen, I'm one to talk. I know I'm addicted to my phone. It's a serious issue that I have to figure out in the future. I'm on my phone far too often. I know it.
I know, but dude, you're in a different scenario. I know you probably, like, you're on social media, but you're a sports guy, and you got to be on top of all leagues, all scores, what's going on.
And that is legitimately what I'm doing. Like, I am, like, today, I've been scrolling constantly waiting for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. news. Like, I'm waiting. Right? It's now past 4 o'clock. The deadline was 1 o'clock, and whether or not, they were going to work this out before arbitration. So all afternoon, I'm waiting. I saw, okay, Varsho, it looks like they figured that out. Ernie Clement, it looks like they figured that out. Manoah, looks like they've come to terms. But we haven't heard anything on Alejandro Kirk or Vladdy. So that's a part of it. Also, what are the lines going to be like in Carolina? The Leafs are on the road. Yes, a lot of it is work-related. But I do think there's an industry in the future coming where people can escape. Like, I could say this going to Augusta this year, going to the Masters, it was so freeing knowing it's like, I don't have my phone. I can't have my phone. No one can call me. I'm not calling anybody else. Sorry, you know where I am. I'm in Augusta, Georgia. I'm at the Masters, and I'm in there for 8 hours. So call all you want, but I'm not answering. And I'm not going to.
But let me ask you this. How long did it take the first day you were at Augusta National before you got the itch where you're like, I got to just sniff around something. I need a score. I need an Insta post.
The catch-22 is, and the irony is, I wanted to know what was going on at Augusta.
Right.
Like, you guys have been down there, right, Dave? You're there, and you're like, I heard a roar, but unless the guy's in the top 10, that's the only thing you can see is the leaderboard, whoever's in the top 10. So that was the irony, is I actually wanted my phone to know what was going on around the grounds of Augusta and the Masters.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is kind of crazy the way it operates.
It's come out with some comments about the Jays front office. Like, what is your take on if they had a mandate of getting better this year and this is their offseason? Like, have you ever seen a management group have to face consequences before a season even gets started? I mean, it's bizarre what's been going on.
It's been abysmal at ODOG. I mean, there's no defense for it other than they've still got some time here. But as Hayes pointed out, like, time is ticking. And until they get the Vladdy situation figured out and until they actually add something of substance to this team that finished last, by the way, finished dead last in the American League East, it's just hard to fathom what they're up to other than getting participation ribbons for trying really hard in free agency and failing.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, is there a scenario, like, I'm going to answer my question before I even ask it.
But do you know what I'm trying to say, Hayes?
I understand what you're saying.
It's not the end of the season exit meetings where it's like it's like before the season, it's like, what are you even putting on the field?
It's almost a fireable offense before the season starts. Like,
yes.
The answer is no, I don't think that would ever happen. But if it gets to a point where they swing and miss, on, and I don't even know if they really want these guys, Pete Alonso and Alex Bregman. And
doesn't that seem like a plan somewhere between B and C?
Yes, and quite frankly, it would look very panicky if you threw like Bregman's coming off a career worst season. So was Alonso. Alonso wasn't the reason the Mets did what they did. The Mets are willing to walk. That says something. The Mets haven't given him the money. That's terrifying. If you're every other team, you're like, why isn't this happening down there in New York? So you got a scenario here where if you do sign those guys, this is where they're probably damned if they do, damned if they don't. If you sign one of those guys, it looks panicky. It looks like you're simply doing it for PR. It looks like you're trying to save your job. And I'm sure behind the scenes, Shapiro and Atkins, and based on what we're reading from a number of reports around the league, is they're trying to be diligent with spending money appropriately, and they're trying to have their own valuation, right, Dave? And they don't want to go over it. Well, if that's the case, you're just going to get burned. You're going to miss everybody. But if that ends up happening and they do replicate what they did last year, because I keep saying it because it is factual, they're going to sign somebody, right? There's still a bunch, like dozens of free agents out there. It may not be a big name. It may not have any impact on wins and losses, but they will, in fact, bring in a couple of pieces. I believe that. But if it replicates the offseason from last year, it would almost be like a proactive, just move off these guys and get it over with. Like, what's the point? What can Shapiro and Atkins possibly sell to a fan base that is so sick and tired of all of it if they don't bring something home? Whether it's via trade, whether it's one of these big names that are still out there.
And we talked about it last
crazy.
year, Brian. It's crazy with all the renovations, and it was like this unveiling of what they did for the fans' experience. And everything looks awesome. The Corona loft bar and all the stuff in there looks great. Except they can't hit one out of the infield.
That's the issue.
It's like, how did you got one thing, right? It's an impressive reno. Mark did a great job on that, but you do that and then put the product on the field, it doesn't add up, man. It just doesn't add up.
And now you worry, guys, that guess what? Vladdy is not going to come at a hometown discount. It's been made pretty clear. And you worry now that, look, you finished last with Vladdy having a hell of a year.
Vladdy doesn't even care, Feschuk, if he gets less money elsewhere at this point, I don't believe. You think that he's at that point where he's like, I'm going to try to jam these guys up because they've been screwing around with this. And if I take less somewhere else next year as a free agent, I will. I don't even care.
Yeah, but the point is, I agree with you, Doug. Like, there does seem to be some friction there that is not good for team building. And we all know the history of what's gone on here with them being very reluctant to pay him on the many opportunities they've had to pay him. But the question is, guys, like, even if they pay him, even if they overpay him, where are they? They're still a last place team. They were last place with him having a great year. And if they overpay him, he's going to be more expensive, the same guy getting older. And where are they? And I almost think, to your point, Doug, they almost have to overpay him now because they've painted themselves into the renovation corner where they don't have a farm system to fall back on. They've put $400 million into the barn. And as you point out, they're selling tall boys on the patio. It's probably their best selling feature as a ball club. So where do they go if they don't just go back to Vladdy and give him what he wants?
Dave, we said that last year. If they signed Ohtani, they would be the Angels North. Like, they would be the Angels of the East with Ohtani. They weren't that good of a team, even with Ohtani on it.
No, you put Ohtani on that team last year, maybe they get to 80 wins. Maybe something like that, 80, 81.
They would have been just the Angels with a different color jersey.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, more or less. And the thing is about Vladdy is he's 25. I do think you can make sense of the idea that you sign him. This year is still going to be a retooling even with him, but you hopefully put pieces in place so that in 26 and 27 and beyond, you can be competitive. That I think you can reason with that plan. I mean, if you're going to sign the guy to a 12-year deal, chances are you're not going to win 12 years straight anyway. You're going to have some ups and downs. And there's another element to this that, again, it speaks to, I think, Blue Jay fans trying to define what this market actually is and what this team is, because they've been consistently a top 10 payroll for a long time. But a lot of that payroll is spread out over the course of a 25 or 26-man roster. The largest contract they've ever signed is George Springer. 6 years, $150. That's nothing in baseball terms. Nothing. That's Pirates territory. That's barely above Rays territory. They're not even in the stratosphere of 10, 12, 14 other teams that actually are willing to go to 250, 280, let alone 330, 350, 6, 7 now. They're not even close. And if you're not going to give it to Vladdy, I said it yesterday, if you're not going to give it to him or be able to convince him to take it, you're never going to give it to anybody. Ever. Mm-hmm. And that is, I really think, an existential moment here for the Jays. If you walk off Vladdy, if you say, sorry, our valuation doesn't match, we're not willing to pay, then what you're telling your fans is, we're never signing anyone of significance.
Well, you can, but it'll be an overpay just to say you paid the guy.
Right, but then why not just do it now? Are there better players than Vladdy? Obviously there are. And Soto would have been one of them. Ohtani would have been one of them. But he's a damn good ball player, right? Like if he's closer to what he was this past year and what he was in 21, and I know that's what's complicating things, is in between it wasn't that great. I get it. But if you believe last year is closer to who the real guy is for the next 7 or 8 years, and you got to pay him $450 instead of $350, do it if you're a real player.
I understand your point.
Or stop pretending like you're a real player, because you're not.
I get your point. But what if they behind the scenes have a feeling that he's not going to be the guy that you can build around and win around? Do you still want to hand that guy $500 million?
Then they should have traded him this winter.
I totally agree with that, but they didn't.
Exactly. So then what the hell are we talking about here with managing assets?
Well, I don't know.
That's the issue.
But Doug, you're right. Like everything they have done and said leads you to believe they don't think they can win with him.
Exactly
leads
right.
It leads you to believe they don't think particularly
highly of him. So to Brian's point,
him.
why didn't they trick somebody in the offseason to thinking that he was the guy and let them pay them and then just start from ground zero? I don't know. Crazy.
Well, I think
stuff.
part of the problem is ground zero isn't pretty. They don't have, like I was down to see Buffalo a bunch this past summer. They don't have a lot of talent down there. Mm-hmm. I've seen the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. They don't have a lot of talent down there in AA. So it's not as though they've got a bunch of kids that they can just, point the fan base to and say, yeah, Vladdy's gone, but look at this guy and this guy and this guy. They don't have that list of prospects that you can point to and say, we're selling hope if we're not selling wins. They're not selling hope. They're not selling wins. They're selling tall boys on the patio.
Yeah, that's the truth. And that is what is scary. And I think they realize that is that if they tear down the major league club, it is torn. They are starting from scratch. It's not a scenario where it's okay. You got some pieces coming. Aurelvis Martinez was their highest rated, bat. He's coming off a PED suspension a year ago. See what he becomes this year. Ricky Tiedemann's already blown out his arm. We don't know when he's going to return. Manoah was going to be a part of the future. Who the hell knows what Alek Manoah is going to be, by the end of 25 into 26. So what do you have? You really are starting from scratch. Now, the reality is, and this has always been hanging over this team, and I think this has always been a conversation Blue Jay fans have been having, is if you feel like that's inevitable, like you're going to have to do that anyway, then get what you can for Bichette and Vladdy, so those are pieces that can contribute to that future.
Right.
But that's the worst nightmare here, is that Vladdy walks, Bo walks, and then at the end of the year they get rid of Shapiro and Atkins, or at least Atkins, and then they realize, oh, sorry, we tried our hardest. We're going to have to actually completely restart. And all they've done is delayed the inevitable. And I used the Kendrys Morales example last week. I think a guy like Anthony Santander, very similar. Probably a better player, but Kendrys was a switch hitter, brought a little power. They signed him going into 17 when they should have realized we're done, it's over. Bautista's finished, Donaldson's finished, Tulo's not playing, Martin's got to go, Gibby's out. We got to reload, and we got to start thinking of the future, but they were caught between a rock and a hard place. So they threw the money around, they signed him, and then a year into that, they're like, what the hell are we going to do with this guy now? We're stuck with him for 2 years. And that's what I'm sure they're thinking about constantly, is if they can't keep Vladdy, can't keep Bichette, it feels like Gausman and Bassett, and these guys, they're of diminishing value. Bassett didn't have a great year last year. Gausman didn't have a great year based on his standards. If Vladdy's going to walk and Bichette's going to walk, but you do sign an Alonso or a Bregman, what's the point? Like, what are those guys?
You just mentioned two guys that'll be fascinating to see their attitudes come spring training, because they speak their mind. And what if they're like, I want out of here. I don't want to be a part of this. I'm a veteran guy, and I want to win, and it's not happening here, so why would I want to stick around?
Chris Bassett was doing the podcast tour last year, man. He was
damn
very
right he
outspoken.
was. He was just talking about how bad they were and how they got there and how they can be better. He didn't go scorched earth, but he was pretty blunt about the assessment of the Jays.
Remember what he said about them swinging and missing an Ohtani? He called it like he saw it, which everyone saw it the same way. He's like, we put all our eggs into the basket of Ohtani. They didn't get him, and then they didn't have a plan. And it kind of feels like we're doing that again. You know, they tried Soto. I don't know how hard they tried or how much they really thought they were in on it. And I don't blame them for trying to go after Soto and Ohtani. Go for it. Sure, give it a shot. Nothing wrong with that. But you better have a plan if it doesn't work. And as of now, it hasn't worked. Again, they have the luxury of another month before pitchers and catchers report. There are a number of free agents out there. But as of now, you know, no news on Vladdy and the Jays in terms of arbitration. He's going to be with the team next year. But, man, it's something. This Blue Jay team in this offseason is wild. You put a quarter in Blue Jay fans, they will talk your ear off right now. And anyway, we got the Leafs in action tonight down in Carolina. We'll come back and get into that. Joseph Wall getting the start. Sounds like Pacioretty will get a night off. Ryan Reeves coming out of the lineup. Morgan Rielly will pair up with Chris Tanev tonight. We talked about that earlier in the week as well. So we'll start teeing that game up. I have a list, 5 people in the NFL with the most pressure to get a Super Bowl win this year. All right, I got a list for you.
Super Bowl win, not just playoff win.
Super Bowl, chasing Super Bowls this season. All right, we'll get to that list a little bit later on as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Pierre LeBrun's coming up just after 5 o'clock. Leafs Carolina tonight. Raptors in Cleveland. Last time I checked, they were a 15.5-point dog. And that doesn't seem like enough, Dave. Honestly,
No.
How are they possibly going to – like, they got crushed by the Knicks last night. And if it weren't for Chris Boucher in the last, 2 minutes, all of a sudden looking like Michael Jordan, they would have lost by 30 last night.
And I haven't exactly been paying close attention to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I know they had an unbelievable start, but they're on – are they serious? Are they a serious team, man?
Yeah, they're very serious, man. They're what are they, 30-4 now or
32-4, Hayes, after beating the Thunder last night. I guess that's the one justification for why the line might be a little lower than you'd expect tonight is because the Cavs are coming off a signature win. And the adrenaline was, pumping through them last night. They were on national TV. I guess Mitchell's not going to play tonight against the Raptors. So that takes a few points off the total. But, man, they're a machine. And the way they just dummied the Raptors on opening night was a freaking dunk fest with those guys just absolutely hammering the Raptors. I'd have a hard time betting the spread if I was on the underdog tonight.
Do you think it's good that they're this good, Feschuk? Is it like the end of the high profile, we got to put a super team together to be successful? Or what are your thoughts on it?
Well, for sure, it's the end of the super team era because the owners made it that, right? O-Dog, with the way they've structured the new salary cap with this so-called second apron, well, you can essentially only have 2 max guys. Unless you really get lucky and figure out a way to work another one in there. But it's punitive to have the kinds of salaries that, say, the Golden State Warriors had in the Splash Brothers Kevin Durant era, where they had a lock on 3 of the best players in the league. And yeah, I think I don't know if it's good for the league. That remains to be seen. I think we've been talking a lot about what's wrong with the NBA this year. And I think part of it is maybe the lack of dynasties.
Lack of dynasties? What about guys don't want to play? I found it hilarious. They were searching for reasons of the fan, disengagement, lack of viewership. They got guys that don't want to play. Let's start with that.
That's definitely at the forefront. And they've also got aging superstars that, are just not overly competitive anymore. You look at the Jimmy Butler story. That's a mess down in Miami, and he wants out. Where does he want to go? To team up with Kevin Durant in Phoenix.
Yeah, and Anthony Edwards and Jokic, and who's the kid
Shea,
in Dallas?
I mean, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
I know, but are those guys going to move the needle like the stars before them? I don't think they're going to. They don't.
No,
they just don't.
It's unreasonable to expect anyone to match LeBron. I think Steph. KD.
Yeah, that's it.
You got Wemba Nyama. Wemby's starting to make it, man. Wemby's starting to put up. They lost last night. He didn't have a great game.
He's the one guy that could maybe flip the switch and be like, this is must watch, and I got to tune in every game.
Big time. Because the way the NBA exists now, in a lot of ways, in terms of the talking points and narrative, it's GOAT talk all the time. There's got to be someone on the forefront that you can compare to Jordan or whatever, and I think that's probably what they need is Wembanyama to get into his 3rd, 4th, 5th season, and you start looking at stats, and then someone's going to jump first, the national media in the States, and say, he's the best. Greatest ever, better than Jordan.
He's in the States. They
Yeah.
do
And then we'll
Jordan.
go.
They do Jordan LeBron every day almost. It
All
seems.
the time.
It's insane. They
All
can't get away
the
from
time.
it. I find it to be outrageous.
Yeah.
Guys, you're right though, Hayes. Like the hardcore basketball guys that I've kind of grown up in the business with over the years. There's already guys down in the States proclaiming the timeline on when Wemby will be the GOAT. Like
Yeah.
they're like, oh, he's 20 now. Wait till he's 25 and he will be the GOAT. Like it's going to be that quick because, and you know what? You watch him last night and almost every night this year. Like the way he does stuff that just doesn't seem fair. Like he threw in that the 1-footed little flip shot from 3-point range. Have you seen him
Yes.
do that?
Yeah.
He goes off 1 foot from 3-point range like he's putting in a layup, and it looks like a layup, but it's a 3-pointer. I mean, I've never seen that before.
It looks like you're in your room and you have one of those like plastic backboard, you know what I'm saying? Like the little Nerf balls.
A Nerf ball.
That's
Yeah.
what it looks like, man. And
It does.
He's shooting 13, 15 threes a night, which is crazy considering his size, yet he's effective. But he does have an element of size to, well, obviously, but the way he plays, he blocks everything. Like he's a menace defensively in the paint. He terrifies the opposition, and there are great things happening in the NBA. They're not happening in LA. You know, it's not happening in Miami. The Knicks are a good team, very good team, but it's Oklahoma City, it's Cleveland, San Antonio's making noise, Denver and Jokic and what he's doing. You know, and again, we'll see what the Raptors have in store tonight. Mitchell not playing, them coming off a big win probably speaks to the line, but I'm not sure it matters with the Raptors right now, the way that they're playing.
Wow. They just
know.
can't match up against this team. They're just so huge.
Well, that's another
With,
thing. Like Mobley and Allen are like you saw what they did last night, Dave. Like the two of them are an absolute handful, and I don't see how the Raptors are going to find a way to break that down tonight. But we'll catch up with Jack Armstrong from Cleveland. Jack's coming up in a couple of hours. Leafs in Carolina tonight. William Nylander, 8 games without a goal, 4 without a point. And this, like the numbers, it kind of snuck up on me. We addressed it the other day. He's kind of in a slump, and you know he's going to break out. It's just a matter of time. But those are pretty extreme numbers. 8 games without a goal, 4 without a point, and he is really not. It's not like he's on the verge of breaking out.
Now
He
his
has not
timing's
looked
off
good.
too, which is the most important thing for a high skill player like that. And the weird thing about it is, in my experiences, you have to just start doing like regular player stuff. Like you got to get on the bike, you got to do extra. And I don't know if that's mental to tell your brain that's like you're trying your best to get out of it, but it's like a cycle. You always got to work hard and you got to do all the professional things, but it's like to get out of it, you got to shoot extra pucks and you got to do all this stuff. And it just, usually his game is free flowing and it just looks like he's the best player on the ice every night. And when that goes away, you got to dig out of it. Because his timing's off. He's passing it when he shouldn't pass. He's not getting those free breakaway looks, which, I don't know, people are onto them or what's going on. But it wouldn't shock me. This is usually the end of the line for a guy with that type of high-end skill. Like, it doesn't go much longer than this. Wouldn't shock me tonight if he gets on the board.
No, exactly. Exactly.
No, it wouldn't shock you. But I think to you, it kind of underlines how, as much as, they're on a 5-game win streak and everything seems, hunky-dory, like, these 5 games they've won in a row here, like they've all been 1-goal games or 2-goal games with empty netters. They've 4 of them have been against the Islanders and the Flyers. Not exactly a murderer's row. And by the way, Joseph Wall has been the best goalie in the league over those 5 games. Like, he's been incredible.
He's been outstanding, and he's going again tonight. And I got a great appreciation for that. It should be a formality. Clearly, with Stolarz out, you're in the prime of your career, and you're coming off a day off. You should
Hayes,
play.
You know what can help a skill player out when they're slumping? The power play.
Well,
Yes.
in this case, I would say it's probably the opposite. That might be what's killing Willie, is he's subjected to this power play right now.
I don't know, that power play, it's an awful way to describe it, but it just looks disorganized. And I don't know if it's because they've got too many guys that want to be the guy, but if you look at the power play a couple years ago in Tampa Bay, there was Kucherov, there was Stamkos, both one-timers, threats. And they would thread the needle through the seam to each other. Both could shoot the puck. And that was 2 dangerous options that nobody wants to deal with. Braden Point was in the middle of that. And sometimes Kucherov would just make a short pass to Braden Point, and he'd slap it into the net. And it would be Rielly or someone else in front of the net. Who's the tall kid from Ottawa?
Nick Paul.
Nick Paul would be in front of the net. One of the two would be in front of the net, and it would be Hedman. So if you take each individual player, you can insert them into those positions. Like Matthews goes in for Kucherov, Nylander goes in for Stamkos, Mitch Marner goes to where Braden Point is, and John Tavares or Matthew Nyes goes in front of the net where Rielly is, and Morgan Rielly or somebody's got to play that role from the back end. And I don't know if it's because no one's got a bomb from back there and they don't have that threat while they're struggling, but they got to fix it, man. It's such an important element to the game these days.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the second half. You know, their penalty kill has been really good this year. Their power play has just never been good.
No.
You know, there's been some pockets, but for the most part, it hasn't been very good.
And it's been for a bit. Like it's
yeah. Well, I mean, what what plagued them the last couple of years was it was great for about 70 games.
Dude, they had that one season. I don't know if it was the COVID season, but it was like the best power play that's ever played the game.
Yes.
And as soon as that ended, it's gone in the tank.
At the end of the last couple of years, it's really gone sideways for them. And come playoff time, you've got to have it. Like, special teams is one of those pillars that make or break a series. They always do. And, you know, it goes without saying you got to have a kill. But you've also got to rely on that. You got to rely on a power play goal in the third period at some point over the course of every series. It has to happen. Like, it's got to get you back in a game or win you a game.
Yep.
And they've got 40 games left to figure it out. You still have time, but they've got to figure it out. And it's been disoriented all year. And again, it feels like when Matthews is here, it actually gets worse. You know, it just seems like when he's there. To your point, there's too many chefs in the kitchen, you know, and there's too much of I got to find a perfect play here, or we got to get the big guy going. Let's get it to Austin. Everything's going to run through him, and it becomes easy to defend. And earlier in the year, remember they tried to break it up, and they broke it up for like a game or two,
and then
they just loaded back up.
You talk about Matthews.
Wow.
I just don't understand. If you watch Alex Ovechkin. And people, you can't throw at me, you can't compare Matthews to Ovi. They do shoot the puck differently, and they shoot, like, Ovi is just a bomb from the top of the dots, and that's what it is. And if you want to talk about Ovi's motion on the power play, it's non-existent. He just stands there, and he's like, if you want to let this be open, I'm going to burn you. So why not just put Matthews at the top of the right dot on his off wing and be like, you want this pass to be open? Then go ahead, because I'll burn you. And if you don't, if you take it away, there is so much else open. If you look at the Washington power play and the teams that kill against it, when they take away Ovi, there is so much open ice in the middle and down low because everyone is afraid to death of his shot. So use Matthews as a decoy for everyone else if you really want to. And if he gets the puck, it's in the back of the net. Like, there's a starting point right there. Get Austin Matthews, the most dangerous player on the ice, where he's a threat and he makes people afraid.
But the one thing about Matthews, though, Doug, I agree that would be a great idea to sort of build around, and they've never really quite done it that way. So I'd like to see that. But the one thing about him is he doesn't really define himself with that bomb the way Ovechkin does, right? Like his kind of way of goal scoring is like find the hole and hit the hole. It's not necessarily about just sheer force.
Okay, Dave. Well, then that's
people.
Mark Savard's job to figure out where to put him. If it goes, maybe he goes into the middle. I don't know, but someone's got to figure out a position to put him on the ice where he's the most dangerous. And if that's not open, everything else is wide open because they're afraid to death of Austin Matthews.
Yeah, something's got to give. I mean, it goes without saying. It's a priority for them. I think they're 18th in the league or something, ranked
18th
power plays. Yeah, like that. There's just too much talent there, and there's too much invested in that to not be in the top 5. Like, that should be the goal, and it's a reasonable one. You should have a top 5 power play every single year. And there's a number of different things I think we could all point to that they're going to try to figure out. And taking the front office out of it between now and the end of the year. Not, obviously the front office is going to acquire some pieces and look to upgrade the roster or whatever. But who's in the room going into the game tonight? I think the power play and sorting that out, figuring it out and getting it clicking is a high priority. I think keeping Joseph Woll healthy is at the top of that list. Now, I don't know how you do that outside of him grinding through some injuries, right? Him basically knocking on wood and avoiding injury as much as possible. And I think you look at Morgan Rielly, I'm intrigued by the idea of him getting a shot to play with Tanev tonight. Because when Tanev was acquired and signed, that was collectively everyone's belief that there's Morgan's pair for the next 5 years, right? He and Tanev will play. And they started camp that way. I believe they started the season that way. But it never clicked. And McCabe and Tanev were such a good pair, but with McCabe's health up in the air, I don't know. It's interesting how the defense core, it's really become Chris Tanev's defense core. Like he's played 42 games and everything runs around him because he's so effective and he's so good. And everyone else just kind of fits in. And it doesn't feel like a scenario where I think in years past you'd look at it like, okay, Tanev, big opportunity for you. You're playing with Morgan. I look at it the opposite way. Big opportunity for Morgan. You get to play with Tanev.
Yeah.
Let's see what you got.
And it seems like there's no reason on paper it shouldn't click. Like you got a guy that can move up the ice and a guy that can take control of the own zone and cover up and do all the right things. It looks like it should be a magical fit.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Because you know what you get out of Tanev. You know exactly what he's going to do. It's on Rielly to feel comfortable getting up in the play. That's when he's at his best. When he's up in the play. You know, he's holding the line. He's driving some offense. You know, he's aggressive. He got walked the other night. He got lucky. Wall stopped him. Can't remember who danced him. Might have been Mitchkov or Lawton. Anyway, he's defensively, it's not going to be perfect for Rielly. It just he's in the league 11 years, right, Dave? He is what he is. He's going to have some flaws there, but he's got to pick up every other element of his game to make you overlook some of those defensive flaws.
And he's got to provide more offense. Like, this is a guy, he's only on pace for 40 points this year, a little less than 40. I mean, this is a guy who threatened, Ian Turnbull's franchise record, 70-plus, at his best, in terms of a point producer. And he's just not doing that this year. And I think part of it is the idea that he's been at his best with a steady, right-handed, stay-at-home guy there for him to kind of give him comfort that he can, kind of weave and kind of wend his way through traffic and join the rush as often as he can. But for whatever reason this year, it just hasn't worked out that way, and he hasn't been the threat that you expect to pop in a goal here and there to contribute a big play when you need one. And I think the Leafs, it's on their list of problems. It's not particularly high, but it's on there.
Yeah.
And I think if without your best defenseman being your best defenseman, and Morgan Rielly right now has not been their best defenseman, I think that's a problem.
Yeah, certainly in terms of a pecking order with price tag too, right? Highest paid defenseman, you got to get a lot of value. I think he's been fine, but fine isn't going to cut it by the end of the year and when you're really chasing something significant here. Pierre LeBrun in 20. We've got Steve Phillips coming up on What's Up with Vladdy, arbitration, the Jays. Again, we're about a month out from pitchers and catchers reporting. A lot still going on in baseball, so we'll catch up with Steve. And I got a list of 5 players and coaches, they're in there too, who need a Super Bowl. The pressure list for chasing a Super Bowl. We'll get to that. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, we sent Al's brother out into the world with a pair of Leaf tickets. You have to guess where he's hiding for your chance to win them. This is the final clue of the week. Thursday's final clue. I think yesterday we knew where he was, but I'm sure there's still people trying to figure this out. Let's get to Thursday's Al's brother's clue.
All right, OD fans, it's Thursday and time for your final clue of the week to find out where is Al's brother and get yourself a pair of Leafs and Devils tickets on January 16th. Your final clue, the Florida Panthers had a pretty epic Stanley Cup celebration at this famous Florida beach bar.
All right, there you go. When you hear the cue to call tomorrow, the first caller through with the correct location wins a pair of tickets to see the Maple Leafs take on the Devils January 16th. Find Al's brother is brought to you by McAlpine Ford in Aurora. Our family, the Ford family, and you. Full details at tsn1050.ca. All right, you guys want to hear my 5-pack of players and coaches?
Fire it up.
I think facing the most pressure to win a Super Bowl. Here we go. Hayesy B's list. Hayesy B listing on a Thursday. Number 5 is going to surprise you guys. Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes. Now, let me explain why he has pressure.
And I'm just going to warn you right now. If Dan Campbell's on this list, I'm walking out. I'll walk out because there's no business of him being on this list. Go ahead with the explanation of Mahomes.
Here's why Mahomes is on the list. He has tunnel vision. Tom Brady's in front of him. That's it. There's one guy in front of him, and that's Tom Brady, in terms of that GOAT conversation. We're talking legacy here. What has Tom Brady never done? He's never won 3 in a row. And if Mahomes can do it, I think it would be a massive, massive ace in the hole for him, where I don't know if he'll get to 7 career Super Bowls or 8 career Super Bowls and pass Brady. I don't think he'll play until he's 44 or 45. I don't think that's going to happen. So the longevity, the amount of winning, the winning spread out, you're asking a lot. You have to strike while the iron's hot. The iron is hot. He's got a chance at 3 straight. He's got the number 1 seed. He's probably got the best team or real close to it. Patrick Mahomes still has pressure because of the legacy he's chasing. I got Mahomes at 5.
Feschuk, can you weigh in on number 5, please?
I mean, of all the people that have a lot of pressure on him, he wouldn't make my list, Hayes.
Okay.
He wouldn't make my, because he's got 3 Super Bowls. He's 29 years old.
This guy just went east to west.
He doesn't win this one.
Some names.
He's chasing
He
Brady.
just picked east to west, and he didn't put any thought into this.
I did not just look at a map.
I
and go
like
east
your
to west.
theory, but he can look. He's 29. He can get to Brady. It's just about how long
Can he
does he want to play.
three-peat again?
Is
Is he going to get a three-peat opportunity ever again? I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is your chance to do something Brady never did. All right? So I got him at 5. I knew I'd get pushback on that. That's fine. And It sounds like I'm going to get pushback at number 4. Dan Campbell is at number 4.
Uh-oh.
Dan Campbell, the head coach.
Do you want me to go down and do the panel right now?
I want.
Go ahead and
let me
let's hear
explain.
why Dan Campbell's on this list.
Here's why, okay? Aaron Glenn is defensive coordinator. He may leave after this year. Ben Johnson, his offensive coordinator, he may leave after this year. You lose both coordinators who are studs and have got both sides of the ball playing outstanding. You are under the gun to get it done this year. And I don't think there's other teams in the NFC that really terrify you right now. Philly's good. They are really good down the stretch. Hurts with the concussion, hasn't played in a couple of weeks. We'll see what he's got. Minnesota, I think, has taken a step back. The Packers certainly have. The door is wide open for Detroit. They've been the best team in the NFC all year. They got the 1 seed. They're at home. This is it, man. Do not mess with fate in Detroit. You've never won a Super Bowl. Who knows what's going to happen to that Lions team in the future? Again, strike while the iron's hot. This is the year to do it. Dan Campbell at 4.
No, it's insane. They are playing with so much house money, more house money. Do you know what they've been for the last 30 years, dude?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Losers.
So,
complete losers.
I get it. So you don't think, you think it's like Super Bowl or bust. And by the way, I've never understood this. Why don't you pay your coordinators, just pay them what you have to pay them to stay? Pay them head coach money. Who cares?
It's a lot of money, man. And the question is, do they want that? Do they want to work for someone else? I don't know if both guys are going to – my guess would be at least one of them will
But why do
return.
they want to be in a cycle of guys just getting hired and fired? You got a great situation. Sign a 4 or 5 year deal as a coordinator. Tell them to up the money and Bob's your
Might
uncle,
happen.
man.
If maybe you got to win a Super Bowl for that to happen, though. Win a Super Bowl, then the owner says, all right, now I got the money for you. I just made a fortune. I can't pay if you keep losing in the playoffs, Dan. Can't pay your guys. All right, I got Dan Campbell at 4. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I like this one more. I like this one more than Mahomes. As much as O-Dog's offended, I understand why. I do think there's a real fear there. It's almost an inevitability that the Lions know this coaching staff will never be the same. That this is a magical year with these guys running on all cylinders, and they're pulling fake fumbles and picket fence stuff and hook and ladder and all this. All the trick plays are working. They're winning every game. It's a good time, and it may never be repeated.
Okay, at number 3, I have Nick Sirianni, the head coach of the Eagles. All right, this guy, I think he's on thin ice, even though they had a good year. They did. Last year they did. The owner and GM said, you got to fire your coordinators, get 2 new guys. He got them. It's worked out for them. Was in a Super Bowl a few years ago. We saw what happened last year. He's been in fights on the sideline with the fans. I feel like if it gets ugly here, I think he's got to get to a Super Bowl anyway. I think anything prior to that could put him in the firing line, especially if they lose early.
It's crazy, though. Garbage teams that just don't win, and the Carolina Panthers, fire that coach. But a guy that continually puts out successful seasons, isn't there anything worth good years?
There should be.
You know what I mean?
To a lot of different places.
Everyone just looks at the coach. Oh, they were talking about firing him last year.
Yeah, because
how many wins did they have
last year? Exactly, and they did turn it around. I just think I think he's still on thin ice. I feel like the way he operates, the way he runs things there, I think the ownership, the GMs really highly he's really beloved around football, and there's a lot of belief in him and the way he's operating, the team he's put forth for the Eagles. I think the thought would be if Sirianni, we're so good, we just need a closer, and you're not it. And that's basically what I'm saying.
I think you're right.
Okay, quickly here. Number 2, I got Josh Allen. I got Allen at number 2. All right, Josh, you could probably flip a coin on number 1. I think you know who number 1's going to be now. But Josh Allen, he's chasing Mahomes. He's got to get one. He's in a market that's starved for it. They've never won. He's so good. I think he's worthy of the MVP this year. I think he's going to win it. And they've got a very good team. They've got a great offensive line, good coach. There's pressure on McDermott, too. There's no question. But Allen's different because he's the face of that franchise. He's the guy. He's the one that's going to get them over the top. If they win, it's going to be because of him. And I'll just finish it, then you guys can comment. I got Lamar at 1. Lamar Jackson at 1. He's already got 2 MVPs. He might get a third one. It could be a co-MVP year. I wouldn't be shocked by that. That has happened before. I think Brett Favre and Barry Sanders had a co-MVP back in the 90s. I wouldn't be shocked. Harbaugh said at the start of the year he thinks he could be the greatest quarterback ever. In order to do that, you have to win. And his performances in the playoffs have not been good. They have not been strong. Lamar's got to perform, and he's got to win. So I got Lamar Jackson at 1, Josh Allen at 2, Nick Sirianni 3, Dan Campbell 4, Patrick Mahomes 5.
Can't argue with the 2 guys at the top.
Yep.
Because there's basically one thing left for them to do, and that's what the list is all about.
Done everything else. Got to win a Super Bowl. All-time great talents, great quarterbacks, future Hall of Famers. You got to win. Don't be Marino. You got to win. Little shot
I'm
at
Bills
Dan.
biased. I might have thrown Sean McDermott in there as well, man.
Yeah,
like he's got just as much as Josh Allen.
I thought about McDermott. McDermott better have his head on straight.
Take Dan
man. He better
Campbell
be
out
ready.
and put McDermott in there.
You think so?
Yeah,
I could
yeah.
reason with that, but I want Campbell in there. It just gets more clicks.
Here's the worst. That's like if Allen has a great game
more
and they
clicks.
lose, that's going to be tough for McDermott.
Very valid. Very valid. Hour 2 coming up. Pierre LeBrun, Steve Phillips coming up as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.